Okay, welcome back. Good morning, all of my dear viewers. Today I am going to for discussion of a very important, very important topic of the forensic medicine, and the name of topic is rigor mortis. Okay, so before discussion of the rigor mortis, we first, we first, I would first like to discuss some postmortem changes develops in muscle tissue. So after the death of a person, there is a sequential changes happens. Already, according to the definition of death, you know that death is not an event; it is a process. So same sequential changes are also develops in muscle tissue. So what are the different sequential changes that occur in muscle tissue? After the death, the first sequential changes that occur in muscle tissue is the development of primary flaccidity. Then, after primary flaccidity in muscle tissue, they develop the rigor mortis, and after the rigor mortis, finally they develop secondary flaccidity. So basically, they are the three things occur in a sequence in muscle tissue after the death of the person. First, there is the development of primary flaccidity, followed by rigor mortis, and the end with secondary flaccidity. So now, first we try to understand why these things are happens. So we start with the primary flaccidity. So whenever a person will die, so after the death of the person, initially there is lots of ATP present in body cells. So muscle cells, what they do, they utilize this ATP for the removal of myosin head from the actin filament. That is the relaxation of the muscles. So this the primary flaccidity is happens. It is the immediate change after the death of the person. The first changes develops in muscle tissue is the development of primary flaccidity. After the primary flaccidity, there is the development of rigor mortis. So now, how this rigor mortis is developed? I mean, what are the pathogenesis behind the developments of the rigor mortis? So what happens after the developments of the primary flaccidity? All the ATP are utilized for removal of myosin head from almost all ATP are utilized for the removal of myosin head from the actin filaments. So after the primary flaccidity, some cells are still their myosin head which attach with the actin filaments. But the problem is that there is not ATP presence in skeletal muscle cells. So if there is no ATP present in the skeletal muscle cells, so now it is impossible for the removal of this myosin head from the actin filament, because ATP is required for the removal of the myosin head from the actin filament. As a result, the muscle get relaxation. But since all the ATP get depleted, so due to the absence of ATP, the skeletal muscle they remain in a contracted stage. So the persistent remaining of a skeletal muscle in a contracted stage, they cause a stiffness of muscle tissue, and this stiffness of the muscle tissue is called rigor mortis. So after the rigor mortis, the third stage is the secondary flaccidity. So secondary flaccidity, what happens? It is due to the decomposition. So after the death of the person, there is the lysosomal cell organelles which contain the digestive enzymes. So when the cell will die, this lysosome get burst and release the digestive enzymes, and these digestive enzymes break down the bond between the actin and myosin, basically actomyosin complex. So due to the breakdown of actomyosin complex by the enzyme released by lysosome due to its bursting, this is called autolysis. On the other hand, there is also bacterial decomposition called the putrefaction. So in putrefaction, bacteria release enzymes, and that enzymes break the ectomyosin complex. So with the help of this bacterial uh, decomposition, I mean putrefaction, and one is the autolysis, the muscle cell undergoes secondary flaccidity. So these are all about the muscle changes that develops after the death of the persons. So now we go for the definition of rigor mortis. So what is this rigor mortis? So rigor mortis is basically early post-mortem changes. Now it is basically early post-mortem changes, or why this early post-mortem changes happens. I mean, uh, this early post-mortem changes happens due to the depletion of ATP. So this rigor mortis begin after 1 to 2 hours of the somatic death, and after 1 to 2 hours of the somatic death, this rigor mortis is a start and it fully develop within 12 hours. So this rigor mortis is the one of the characteristics feature of molecular death. So the overall the definition of rigor mortis. In rigor mortis, what are the order of appearance of rigor mortis? This order of appearance of the rigor mortis, it is given by a scientist Neston. So it is also called Neston rules. So according to this Neston rule, the rigor mortis is first develops in the hearts, especially in the left chamber, then right chamber. So after development rigor mortis in the chest, now they develops. I mean after heart they develops in eyelids. Then after eyelids they develops in neck. Then after neck they develops in lower jaw, then chest, then abdomens, and then upper and lower limbs, and finally it develops in the digit, I mean toe and the fingers. So these are the order of developments of rigor mortis. One of the important is the rule of 12. So according to this rule of 12, the rigor mortis fully develop within the 12th hour. They remain persistent for the 12 hours and it disappear after the 12 hours. So overall I am saying, if any person come to your hospital for the autopsy and you say there is absence of the rigor mortis. So if any dead bodies there is the absence of rigor mortis, it indicates two conditions. The first, it is the death within 1 to 2 hours. I mean there is no beginning of the rigor mortis, or the rigor mortis is disappear. I mean the death of a person is beyond the 36 hours. So these are the two conclusions of rigor mortis according to this rule of 12. The next topic is the interpretation of the rigor mortis. So what are the interpretation of the rigor mortis? Let's see. Let's suppose if rigor mortis develops in any bodies, but no, they are not very hard. We can easily move the limbs with a little force. So this is the criteria of what moderate rigor mortis. But if the rigor mortis develops in limbs is so strong, we feel very difficult to move the limbs. So it is according to this, it is characterized as a strong rigor mortis. So the third thing is, if the rigor mortis are develops in the proximal parts, but they are absent in the digits, I mean fingers. So it indicate a developing phase of rigor mortis, because rigor mortis they start from the proximal and goes toward the distal limbs. But the fourth scenario is that if the rigor mortis is present in fingers, but it is absent in proximal parts of the limbs. So it is indicating our disappearance phases, because disappearance is a start from the lowest phases. These all things are written on board, so we are going to discuss one by one. So first we start the rigor mortis. It is the post-mortem muscle changes characterized by molecular death. Okay, so after the death, the first muscle first undergoes the primary flaccidity, followed by rigor mortis, and the end with the secondary flaccidity. Okay, so definition: it is the early post-mortem changes begin within 1 to 2 hours after the somatic death, characterized by the stiffness or the rigidity of the voluntary and involuntary muscle. Okay, let's see. In case of the rigor mortis, now both voluntary and the involuntary muscle get affected, or I mean, stiffness develops in both the voluntary and the involuntary muscles. Okay, this stiffness is developed due to the depletion of ATP. It is a sign of molecular death. Look like a slight flexion at the level of joints. Okay, order of appearance of rigor mortis: first start with hearts, then eyelids, neck, lower jaw, face, chest, abdomen, lower limbs and upper limbs, and finally they develops in finger and toe. Okay, rule of 12: fully develop within the 12 hours, remain for 12 hours and disappear after the 12th hour. Interpretation: limbs moves with a little force and moderate rigor mortis. Limbs moves with a strong force and a strong rigor mortis. Limbs are freely movable. If limbs are freely movable, there are two conditions: either the death body is less than 1 to 2 hours, I mean there is not a beginning of the developments of the rigor mortis, or there is pass out of the disappearance phase and death body is more than 36 hours. So the fourth thing is, if the rigor mortis develops only the proximal parts, I mean nearest to the axis, so this is the indicatives of proximal limbs, or I mean biceps and deltoid, indicating of the developing phase of the rigor mortis. And if the distal part of the limbs show rigidity, I mean rigor mortis in disappearance form. Okay, not rigor mortis is not developed in a fetus of less than 7 years and septicemia. Okay, this is the important point. Rigor mortis is not developed in a fetus of less than 7 months and a septicemia. Okay, if any condition in which the ATP depletion is fast, in that condition the early onset of the rigor mortis, example in case of violence death or death in case of a struggle. Differential diagnosis is the cadaveric spasm, heat stiffness, cold stiffness, and the gas stiffness. Medical legal importance: they test the time since death and the position of body at the time of death. Okay, so this is all about the rigor mortis. Welcome back in next video.